Blog Talk Radio.
Namaste, everyone. This is Nature of Reality Radio on September 16th, 2015. This is your host, Andrew Fisher, broadcasting Wednesdays from the suburbs of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to expose the true and false nature of reality for what it is and what it isn't. Today on the show, we have a third-party presidential candidate who will fight for freedom and truth, Ed Baker, 2016 third-party presidential candidate. I was introduced to him by Elizabeth Diamond, who was a guest on my show, and I was a guest on her show a couple times, and of course she also let me come to that retreat on an Indian reservation ground in Vortex Point in the Atlanta, Georgia area back over Independence Day weekend. Very interested to see what Ed Baker has to talk about. You don't hear much about third-party presidential candidates nowadays because it's all a two-party system, which is really a one-party system masquerading as a two-party system because the Illuminati bloodlines control the Democrats and Republicans and pretty much every other major political party and every other national government on planet Earth. So Ed Baker, I believe this is him, area code 971 here in the queue. I will get him on. And no later than 10 minutes after the hour. So he started working in market research call centers at the age of 15. He conducted telephone surveys on many topics with consumers and businesses and moved up quickly in this field. And within a few years was at a director level managing a data collection and had a couple of startups in the field as well. His understanding, conducting quality opinion research, and values talking to people about important issues. He enjoys talking on the phone and in person with these issues as well. He does not believe the president can be expected to not have entertainment and employment a few hours a week, but he will be happy to throw out the occasional first pitch for our national pastime of baseball. I believe I read somewhere that William Howard Taft was the first president who threw out the first pitch at a Major League Baseball game. Howard Taft was a notorious skull and bones member. But nobody in the chat room yet. Hopefully some people will tune in. I'm expecting Elizabeth Diamond Mulligan to call into the show. She did call on my cell phone a couple of hours ago to tell me that she would like to call on the show. I'm not going to take any callers until 7:15 p.m. Eastern, which is in an hour and 13 minutes away. But if Elizabeth is on, I guess I'll let her plug her show as well. But first, as usual, we are going to start with the news courtesy of Alex Jones and Company at InfoWars. First article is just a note to point out that InfoWars is going to be having a money bomb, says live feed video, 28 hours. Hey, if anybody wants to donate money to them, by all means do that. They'll be having previously unaired reports and special prizes and exclusive guests. Even though a lot of the stuff Alex Jones talks about is preaching to the choir, it is key at a down-to-earth level for waking the sheeple up specifically before you start talking about really crazy things. And I mean, a lot of stuff he talks about can be scary and all that, but still, that's the way things go in a matrix like this. So if you want to donate money to Alex, by all means do. And I don't think I'll donate anything to him, but that's okay because I buy a lot of his products on the InfoWars store, and I believe they've done my body good. Next article, illegal sentence to 10 years probation after killing Texas man. Was illegal alien given preferential treatment after mowing down innocent man? Yes, you kill someone, you often get life in prison without any possibility of parole, or in the case of Texas, you get the death penalty a lot more than most other places, but this guy just gets 10 years probation. Doesn't make sense, it's not supposed to, but then it does make sense because he's an illegal alien. They want to use illegal immigrants to screw us over. Next article, U.S. boots on the ground in Syria. The Department of Defense claims troops conducting special ops with Kurds. Yeah, I just want the American government, the American troop to get the hell out of the Middle East, which is the womb chakra of Mother Earth, and Syria. We're doing everything we can to get Assad out of there. He's not an angel, but he's not a horrible, horrible dictator. And, they had to lie about chemical weapons attacks, him staging them. He didn't stage them, but they say that he did that he was responsible for that to justify invading because it won World War III. Well, it didn't work. Good thing it didn't work. People aren't going to fall for it like they fell for the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq lie back in 2003. So let's not fall for it. And I ask the Russians also, could you please stay out of this as well? I know you're on Syria's side, but it would be really nice if you not jump in there and enhance the chances of a World War III happening. Next article, cop who paralyzed grandfather for no reason remains unpunished after mistrial is declared. The jury could not reach a unanimous decision despite footage of officers slamming elderly man face first into the concrete. So what is it with these juries? Are they just are they actually in on the conspiracy to let the police do these terrible things? Are they too cowardly to punish the police? Are people telling them, you find the cop innocent, or we're going to murder you and your wife and kids if you don't? Or are they just really, really stupid? Well, it's probably a combination of both. But I was summoned for jury duty once on Halloween back in 2007, of all the days to get summoned on jury duty. And they eventually sent us home. There was no need to hold a duty or anything. But if I was on that jury bench, I'd certainly exercise all my rights. I got my citizens guidebook here that I get every single time I buy a product from InfoWars, and I'll hold on to that forever, and I'll definitely take it with me if I go to jury duty to explain rights as a juror, and I'd make sure that if I know the guy's innocent, I'm going to say something about it, and I'm not going to be a disruptive jerk in the courtroom, but still, you gotta, if you know that this guy's innocent, say it. If you know he's guilty and you don't want him to go unpunished for what he did, then, well, don't act stupid. Make sure the guilty, who are obviously guilty, get found guilty, and the innocent get found innocent. It's not rocket science. Next article, fake. Petition filed to ban Oktoberfest because it offends Muslims. Author Richard Dawkins, Dogma Dawkins, as David Icke calls him, asks if petition is genuine. Yes, Richard Dawkins, there's a lot of questions about him. He probably knows a lot of things that he says are fake or not fake, that he says are miracles that can't happen or can happen, like homeopathy and all the rest of it. And I don't really have time to look into this petition that about banning Oktoberfest, offending Muslims and all that. I don't really think of Oktoberfest being very Muslim and all, but whatever this may be about, why they put the word question mark after the word fake, who knows? You guys are welcome to look at this on your own. But anyway, next article. Oh, never mind. It's just another thing about the InfoWars money bomb saying, let's take back our republic. Don't have to talk about that. Already did. Next article. Refugee crisis cited as pretext for British no-fly zone in Syria. The British may use naval ships armed with cruise missiles to enforce a no-fly zone. Well, British, could you please not use your naval ships and use your cruise missiles? And this whole no-fly zone thing, do you have authority to put a no-fly zone in Syria, in that area? Well, Syria is not particularly on the same side as the British, obviously, because the British are our ally. Then I would put ally in quotation marks because it's all an illusion. Even the countries that are not our allies, like Russia and all, are controlled by the Illuminati. But but then again, they're trying to turn against the Illuminati, forming the BRICS nation thing and all that, which is a good thing in a sense, but still controlled by the same powers that be. And this whole refugee crisis, there's a lot of things they're not telling us about it. Paul Joseph Watson, InfoWars reporter, did a video recently. I watched it, talking about things the mainstream media is not telling us about the refugee crisis in Europe. And, well, there's probably a lot of propaganda, false propaganda being spread around in regards to this whole this pretext for a British no-fly zone in Syria. So feel free to look at this on your own. I just would prefer the British not to use these cruise missiles, and I prefer no countries use cruise missiles in the womb chakra of the Middle East. Next article, ex-Stasi agent hired to censor xenophobic Facebook posts. The German government cranks down on dissent against migrant influx. Yes, this migrant influx thing is it's causing a lot of panic. Seeing all these people come to this country, and coming into the countries of Europe, and people, it's like the illegal immigration thing going on in America, and these people that are against this migrant crisis, the xenophobes or whatever you want to call them. Now they're being censored on Facebook, and Facebook, you advertise as a commons. Could you act like you understand that? And an ex-Stasi agent of all people? Makes sense, doesn't it? Next article, House Democrat wants 9/11 docs on Saudi Arabia declassified. Quote, we still don't have the complete story on the weeks and months preparation by the hijackers. Yes, the hijackers, well, the planes that hit the Twin Towers were holograms, so there was nobody on those planes. Those hijackers that the people that they said, the 19 hijackers, they were real people and all that, but they did not do what they told us that they did. And this whole thing about Saudi Arabia, it's been said that at the bare minimum, U.S. government let it happen. They let the Saudi Arabians execute the attacks while they stood down. And Saudi Arabia did play a big role. There's a book, The Big Bamboozle, it's called, and the guy who wrote that was murdered, and as was his family. And there's these 28-page documents talking about how Saudi Arabia played a big role in 9/11 that they want released. Well, the freedom fighters want to release, but the powers that be don't, so they're trying to suppress that. A lot of stuff has been coming out saying how Saudi Arabia did play a big role in 9/11. Sure, Ed Baker would definitely be in on that because he does on his Facebook page have I saw one of his posts somewhere talking about 9/11 here. One of the posts I put on my little screenshots here on Blog Talk Radio, but I see Elizabeth Diamond Mulligan is here in the queue, area code 612. Elizabeth, glad you called in. I guess I'll let you on in an hour and 5 minutes or so, but first let's get Ed on. Area code 971, is this Ed Baker?
It is.
How you doing? Glad to have you on. Very political-oriented conversation where we're going to have. I mean, a lot of my listeners, they seem to not really be into the conspiracy stuff, and I'm not saying that you are. It's just that when you associate government with truth and freedom fighting, you often seem like the conspiracy field gets thrown in there. But hey, I'm sure you're into that because I did see some sort of a poster, like I said, something with you regarding trying to find the truth about 9/11, and also you told me that you were at a UFO conference, and you don't hear much about presidents trying to expose UFOs, and we all know what happened to JFK when he said he wanted to expose UFO documents. I'll give you the chance to talk about that, but where to start with you? Well, I guess tell us, what is your political party and what does it believe in, and then we'll just ad-lib from there, and I'll let my guardian angels and spirit guides lead me on this interview to ask you the best questions possible.
Well, thank you so much, and just because I ad-libbed this whole thing myself, so your news report there was just interesting because I was just going check by check by check. It sounded like my, if you want to call it a platform, just was going right down that whole thing about the illegal immigrant issues and the police accountability and so many other things. But yes, first of all, I'm not a member of any political party at all. My name is Ed Baker. I filed with the Federal Elections Commission in August 2014 to be a candidate in the upcoming presidential election. Not a member of any political party, and I am very serious about being an option for your listeners to consider supporting that does have a chance to win. It's going to take a lot of help with spreading the word to other people. Obviously I'm competing against people that have a lot of name recognition, have the mainstream media, have money, but I do believe that we can compete with them as long as those that would like to see us be successful spread the word, and shows like yours are a huge help for, having your audience be introduced to myself and what I'm trying to do. So I'm not a member of any political party, and so what I believe in is I believe in not using words that are divisive, like liberal, conservative, moderate, left-wing, right-wing. I don't know what those terms mean when it comes to a person and politics. I don't use those words. I consider those labels. I consider those to be very divisive, and like I'm looking for differences in people when I hear those words. So one of my big reasons for running for president is that you have this, as you talked about in your opening, about the two-party, which really is one party. But, you get this president on for a State of the Union address, and immediately following that, the major media networks take you to a rebuttal from, quote, the other side. And so you have this ongoing fighting. You don't even have 30 seconds to digest what the president said, to get behind anything. that they said, and this is assuming that it was the right situation where these things were not all controlled outside of things, but just from the standpoint of if things were running the way that we believe that they are or that they should be, you still have this neighbor versus neighbor fighting going on constantly, and I'm totally against that. I'm somebody that looks at each issue individually. I try to learn everything I can about it before I give comments on it, give my thoughts on it. So when you ask some questions today, I very likely will say I don't know, more than probably any other candidate would, because there's so much to learn that I'm constantly, looking into finding out more facts. I don't just make up stuff or talk, out my rear end just to sound like I know something. It amazes me that all these other presidential candidates that are on TV have answers for everything. They know it all. And, of course, they have a lot of people feeding them that information and telling them how to answer those questions. I think people appreciate that I'm honest when I say I don't know about certain things and that I'm learning about them, and I give where I'm at right now with it, but, very much open to learning a lot more. And so that's just how I kind of look at things. I believe that when you have a Democrat or a Republican, I rarely even use those party names because they get plenty of publicity, but without me doing that, I think that they pretty much are saying when they go up and they talk to try to get their supporters, they pretty much say, I'm going to represent you and I'm not going to represent these other people. And these other people are Americans that are probably at least 40% of the country when they say that. And with me, nobody's going to agree with me on everything, but just because you disagree with me on my stance on gun owner rights, it doesn't mean that you're going to disagree with me on my stance on immigration or my stance on, gay rights or whatever else there might be out there. Just because you disagree with me on one thing doesn't mean that I'm your enemy now and you're not going to agree with me on the next 4 issues. And I think that that's what's happening too much is you just get these people that are just dead set against, another person, and we don't get anywhere. So that's pretty much my answer, I guess, to that question.
Thank you very much. As far as some of the things, I'm looking at your site here, and I guess I might as well ask you to talk a little bit more about yourself. Some might say you're shooting yourself in the foot with this article here, talking about your addiction and criminal history. You want to become president, and you're throwing this out for people to see. While you're saying, well, I want to get this off my chest. I want to confess my sins and all that. Well, some people say that's not necessarily in your best interest to do that. So if you don't want to talk about this, fine. I'm assuming you do because it's already on your website. It's not like people wouldn't be able to see this, but your addiction and criminal history. Why don't you tell us about that, and why in the world would you put this out there for all the people that don't understand why a person who wants to run for president would do this?
Okay. Not anything I'm proud of, not anything that I, it's on the second page of my website, it's on my bio. It's on there for a few reasons. One is that I want anyone that decides to be my running mate to know exactly what they're getting into, who they're standing with when all these questions do come out. I also want anyone that decides that they're supporting me and wants to put a bumper sticker on their car, wants to post something on Facebook saying this is the guy I believe in, I want them to know who they're supporting. So, look, in a perfect situation, I wouldn't have made any of these poor choices in my life, and I think I'd have a much smoother sail in this. But I don't even know that I would be running for president if I didn't go through the processes that I have in my life and have the, awareness that I do to certain things, okay? So look, from my early childhood, I had a gambling addiction. I would bet on anything you could imagine. I remember being 7, 8, 9 years old over at Grandma's, getting out the sports page, going down the latest line and picking out what baseball teams would win that day. And that night watching the news and, looking down, and I was right quite a bit on those. And then my parents were into going to the dog races. They'd have the dog book. I'd go through, pick the dogs. They would go sometimes put a bet on a dog that I would pick, usually based on the name that had cat in the name. I'd probably bet on it. Rat-a-tat-tat, I think, was one, and who knows. But, and so that was my earliest introduction into gambling was through those things. I ended up getting into, by the time I was 18, my 18th birthday, I bought my first Keno ticket. Oregon is a huge gambling state when it comes to our Oregon lottery. It's a huge revenue for the state. And my very first dollar I spent on Keno, I won $50. And, just on and on and on. It's anything you can imagine. Sports betting, I used had my dad get an account when I was like 15, 16, and I was betting large amounts. I mean, for me, it was large amounts, a couple $100, $300 on baseball games. Went to the casinos in Oregon. There's a couple on Indian reservations, and would play poker and roulette and any of those different things. So I was really, and then where I worked, it was office pools. I mean, we would bet on anything and everything. That a new group of 8 people that would start training that day, and we would be picking out which one would quit before lunch, which one would, who would last the longest. I mean, it was just I don't know if the word is culture, but just the atmosphere that I was around, the people I was around, we were gamblers. I mean, I would gamble on anything. And so, as time went on, and I don't mean to make excuses for this at all, but what I learned from getting gambling counseling is that this addiction progresses, and as it progresses, you likely will commit a crime as it goes on. You likely will get into some money that's not yours or do something else. And what happened was I've always felt a lot of pressure on myself to take care of my family, my parents, my grandma, and this sort of thing. So my parents were getting older. They were getting sicker. My grandmother had left the home where she had been taking care of my family and paying a lot of the bills. She had gotten sick and had to go into a home, I don't know, some kind of care, home where she still lives today. Assisted living is the term. And so she could no longer help out my family in that area. So I got very desperate, and the only thing I could figure to do was to, get better at gambling, and I thought I had a system and all this sort of thing. So the bottom line is I got into money while I was managing a convenience store that was not my money. I ended up gambling, losing $3,200. I floated that money for about 2 months, which required me going into work twice a day and, just doing a lot of magic to make it so I could make it another day, trying to get to where I could, pay back that money. And eventually I got caught. When I got caught, I fully cooperated at that point, admitted to everything. The police, I turned in my keys and all that. The police called me that night. I gave my police statement, and I said, well, okay, so now what? What happens now? And they said, well, I think they said 2 weeks. It might have been longer. They said you will have a warrant out for your arrest, and the best thing that you can do is turn yourself in. So the day after I lost my jobs, I got 2 jobs. The same day, I was on the phone with 2 temp agencies that I had done work for in the past, and I had 2 jobs lined up for the next day. So I immediately was working literally the next day for 2 companies. I worked out something to pay back the money through a bill collector. And 2 weeks later, I called, and there's no warrant for my arrest. Another couple of weeks, a month goes by, I'm calling, no warrant for my arrest. And I actually called and left a message I was already paying back the money, $100 a month, through this bill collector. I paid $200 at this point. I called, and they said, I called and left a message for the owner of the company that I had worked for, and asking if we had, if there was any knowledge, was this being worked out now because I was paying this money? Is there anything going forward? So I called the police one more time, no warrant. The next day, there were 4 police officers and a dog at my door, arresting me, saying that they had a warrant for my arrest. And so the bottom line is this, and that's my long, drawn-out thing with that, but I ended up getting a plea agreement. It was a felony theft 1. I did 15 days in jail. Right in the middle of that, my dad died 7 days in. I couldn't be there to help my mother through that. Couldn't be there for my dad, obviously. The day I got out of jail, his obituary was in the paper. Thankfully, he had daughters in a previous marriage, and I didn't grow up with them, but they are all in my life now. And one of them helped tremendously to take care of all of the stuff associated with his, after he passed. And so it was a really tough thing. Now, my plea agreement had nothing in it about gambling or about theft. anything else. There was 2 years probation, there was restitution, there was all this other stuff, but nothing to address the problems. So I think that's a key thing here. And my attitude, because both the companies that I worked for, they wanted me to stay on, but the temp agencies both said I couldn't work there because I was honest and said, hey, I've got, I'm going to jail for a couple of weeks. I'm going to get help for this addiction I have. And the companies were like cool with that, but the temp agencies both said we can't have you anymore. So now I'm out of work, and so I looked into my mind went right away to, well, I guess I better get good at playing poker because that's all I can do now. So that was where my mind was right then. Well, when I got out of jail, obviously my dad had just died. I just want to get home to my mom. I have to go check in with a probation officer. I couldn't get a hold of my mom. I didn't know she'd killed herself. I didn't know, what was going on. My mom had mental illness issues, and now she's by herself, and I didn't know what was going on. So I'm freaked out. I go to the PO. First words out of her mouth were, why did you do it? And I said, I have a gambling addiction. She immediately snapped at me and said, I mandate you to get gambling counseling. I said, thank you. She said, no, I'm serious. If I see you at a poker machine, I'll send you back to jail. And I said, no, seriously, thank you. I need the help. I need, I want to be, this is good incentive. I need this. So bottom line is I got home, spent time with my mom, had gambling counseling right after that. And for 2 years, I had just the most amazing gambling counselor, group counseling, and I didn't gamble again during that period. Since then, I have played a couple, maybe 4 or 5 $30 poker tournaments, but I've never had any, of the gambling like what I ever did before. I have no desire to gamble. If there's gambling on TV, I turn it off. If I'm at a sports bar or something, I go right up to the TV and just turn it from the poker or whatever because I don't even want to see it. But that's the deal. So why do I talk about it? Why is it suicide? Whatever. Well, one, it's there. I mean, why would I not bring it up when obviously they're going to bring it up? I'm not going to let it stop me. It's ruined enough of my life, the gambling, what it cost me, and then also obviously the criminal record. But I have an understanding that these other candidates will not have about what people go through when they have a felony, what people go through when they have an addiction that is in that position, what they go through when they're trying to take care of loved ones and they're not able to do it. And so it is what it is. I'm not proud of it, but it is a part of my history, and I try to make the most of it. And I'm happy to say I'm in a heck of a lot better place than I was in January 2009.
It's good to see you have a positive attitude about it, even though it's not something very positive. Keep high hopes up and good things will come to you, so says the law of attraction. But moving on to some of the other things here in regards to your goals and platform, I guess we'll take this bit by bit here. Deport illegal aliens. Okay, here's my take on illegal immigration. I don't have any sort of a problem with forcing immigrants to have to go through some sort of a process to come through this country. Although I guess it would be fair that I ask you what kind of process should they go through. Before I say that, though, I would say it would be nice if we could all see the day where people could cross international borders without any government permission or paperwork filing, and people could just dock their ships, their private ships into ports on the shore and such, and not have to go through like an Ellis Island type procedure to immigrant into this country. But, I mean, I understand at the same time that not all borders are created equal. Just look at America. You got the Canadian border, which is much more angel-like than the Mexican-American border, which is not so pretty. And that the latter border is the one that we are most concerned about, because it seems like the powers that be in the American government are trying to bring illegal immigrants into this country through open borders to screw us all over, take our jobs, and all the rest of it. Of course, some other countries, like the countries that border Switzerland, for example, wouldn't necessarily be so concerned about having to secure their border because they don't really perceive Switzerland as being that dangerous a country. Well, don't get me wrong, Switzerland, it's not really a neutral country. It's a neutral country in name only, because the powers that be, they call it a neutral country so they can hide there for all their banking business and all that, and use that country as it's like its European luxury resort. But then again, it is a pretty a pretty peaceful country that the bordering countries wouldn't be so concerned about being neighbors with. And so is Canada to some degree, but Mexico, no, it's completely different. So when it comes to the issue of illegal immigrants and what kind of process you want them to have to go through, and how you go, what kind of, for that matter, what kind of deportation process once you find out someone is an illegal alien. What is your take on this issue? You've got the floor.
Sounds good. My weakest area probably is foreign matters, as far as, you talk about all those other borders, and that's all stuff I got to get a lot stronger about. I am much more concerned about what happens within our borders of America and our people. I'm big on putting our people first and not worrying so much about helping others outside of America until we're taking care of our own. So, that being said, my stance against illegal aliens is, or foreign invaders perhaps is a better word, term, is that is probably stronger than any other candidate that will be on any ballot this election. So first of all, I do believe that we need to secure the border in some way, shape, or form. Now, is that with a fence? Is it with military? I think we need to figure out what is the most effective way to do that, cost-effective, and certainly effective in stopping them from entering. I think a big part of the problem is that we're just letting so many people in to begin with, and really not enforcing that. So it's just being multiplied day by day, week by week, and now we've got these millions and millions of people here that are here illegally. I do believe in the need to deport everyone that is here illegally, and what I look at there, I have no problem with those that came here legally, that followed whatever procedure is in place to do so. And I've got no problem with that at all. I've got a problem with people that take shortcuts, people that skip ahead of those that are in line. And what I would like to do is, my plan is to create a voluntary deportation period, whether that be 90 days or another time frame, where they would be able to turn themselves in, go through the process, being fingerprinted and doing whatever is necessary in that process to set up for their deportation. And by doing so, by turning themselves in within that period, they would have the opportunity, after a set period of time, say 5 years goes by, to follow the procedures to legally enter the country. If they failed to do so, if they did not turn themselves in voluntarily, once they were found, they would be deported and they would never be allowed to return. And I think that that's a way to do it. What I don't hear others talking about is the need to address the reasons that the benefits that they get from coming here, in that I think we need to punish those that are employing them illegally and those that are housing them illegally. So I think that we need to, in the case of an employer, I think we need to fine them. I think we need to strip them of any licenses that they may need to have to operate. And if they continue to illegally employ these people, then I think that they need to, have deeper consequences, jail time, things of that nature. So, look, I just believe that America needs to take a strong stand in this area. I think that it would help us in many ways. I think that we're paying out a lot of benefits to people that are here illegally. We are costing jobs. I do not buy that Americans will not do these jobs that they are coming here to do. I just don't buy that. So I think our crime rates go down. There's just a lot of things there. And you talked about in the opening there about the case of somebody, I don't know if you said it was actually in Texas, but where, they got 10 years probation for murder or whatever. I mean, that's just outrageous. And rapes, and I'm not saying that everyone that comes here illegally is raping people. I'm not saying that everyone that comes here illegally is a bad guy. I'm sure a lot of them that come here illegally do just want a better life for themselves and their families. That said, I believe that you follow the rules and you do it the right way. And they don't do that. So one thing that I'm getting some heat on in this one is that I say, they go, well, you can't split up families. You can't do that. So one of the things that I say is, look, if you are a father and you 10 years ago you murdered somebody, you were in a gang and you murdered somebody. You changed your life around, you went off and you got away from that life 10, 12 years later, you have 3 kids, a wife, and one day DNA evidence catches up with you and they come to your door and they say, you are under arrest for the murder of so-and-so. You're going to have to at some point look your kids and your family in the eye and say, I committed a crime. I made a mistake 12 years ago. My life was different back then, and I did this, and now I'm going to be punished. And now, well, of course, they probably only get 10 years probation, but in theory, they would, go to jail for a long time. But so some people go, well, you can't compare this to murder. And I go, well, it's a crime, and when they come over and then they have 3 more kids, it triples the problem. And so one quick story is I had a friend from Hungary. She had moved here. I became friends with her, a lover, somebody that helped my family out in times of need. And she had 3 kids, and her ex-husband died of like a drug overdose or something eventually. And she ended up going home, I think, to visit her mom, took the kids with her, and she decided to stay in Hungary. So sometime later, probably on Facebook or something, after she probably had seen many of my posts about this subject, she sent me a message and said, by the way, I came to America on a 6-month work visa, and I overstayed it by 14 and a half years. And the bottom line is this. If I had known that, I would have turned her in the day I found out, at any time during that time. And people go, whoa, that is cold. And she knows I would have. I mean, I make that very clear. We're still friends, probably not as good of friends as we were, probably, to her, but that's the truth. And if I don't take that stand against someone that did the things she did for myself and my family, I couldn't take that stand against anyone else. And she's not from Mexico. People always go, oh, it's Mexicans, you don't like, whatever. That has nothing to do with it. It doesn't matter to me. It's the bottom line is that she took advantage of our country for 14 and a half years, had all these kids who now have dual citizenship, by the way. And I have a problem with it. I think it's a huge issue. So that is my stance on that.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move on to some other goals and platforms. All right, reopen 9/11 investigation. Let me give you first my take on 9/11. I was not at Ground Zero this year. I had gone the previous 2 years, but I decided I don't think I'm really going to be going there anymore. It's probably not in my best interest because, well, I kind of have a little beef with the 9/11 truth movement, well, some of the people in the movement, over the fact that some of the things that they don't really want to talk about it because, among other things, they feel it would discredit the truth movement. Let me give you a good story here that proves my point. A couple of years ago, an individual called into the Alex Jones show and said, Alex, I think John Lear deserves a lot more credit for what he said about the fact that the planes were holograms that hit the Twin Towers and the evidence through the scientific method shows it has to be true. Do you think maybe we should start talking about it? And Alex refused to talk about it because he feared that it would discredit the 9/11 truth movement. Likewise, a lot of people will not talk about the issue of the towers being dustified by some sort of a direct energy weapon because, well, it's so obvious that they were because the dust of the Twin Towers was microscopic. You can't pulverize a building into microscopic dust unless you use some type of direct energy weapon. There is a debate whether it was death ray on a space-based platform in Earth's orbit, or whether it was nuclear bombs, and how exactly those bombs were planted out is kind of hard to prove based on the evidence. Some people also say HARP, the weather modification technology, was also used to dustify the towers. Alfred Weber talked about that in an interview with him, but 9/11 Truth Movement seems more concerned with gathering acceptance from society. They're more of an acceptance into society movement than they are a truth movement that wants to get to the bottom line of what actually happened. So they're not really going to speculate so much about what may have happened, even on some of the things that are easy to prove, like the fact that planes were holograms and a direct energy weapon took down the Twin Towers. Of course, we are learning new things all the time. Barbara Honninger is a good case in point. She did a presentation back in early 2013 explaining what actually happened at the Pentagon, among other things, talking about how like a drone that was painted to look like an American Airlines plane was shot down by a helicopter hovering around out of sight of most of the witnesses in the vicinity of the Pentagon, and shot down the drone, and some of the shards you see on the ground are actually shards of that drone, and bombs planted within the building were what caused a lot of the damage. And you really can't say a missile hit the Pentagon because even though it looks like on those Freedom of Information Act videos like a missile. If you look closely, the problem is that video is tampered with. Like if you synchronize the two videos, the videos that were obtained through Freedom of Information Act, you will find that in like one video, the nose is in back of the tail in the other video, which proves the government tampered with the videos. But the bad news there is you can't use that as evidence for pretty much anything simply because it was tampered with. So more and more things are coming out. But, I mean, proving the official story of 9/11 is an impossible joke, and proving the government lied to us. I mean, even what's his name, John Farmer Jr., the Security Council, the senior counsel, of the 9/11 Commission, said that what the government and told the media and everybody else about 9/11 was entirely and inexplicably untrue, and there was an agreement to lie about what happened. Right there is a confession of the crime of sorts that 9/11 was an inside job. But like I said, there's certain things the truth movement will not talk about, and when you start like disagreeing, that's when the truth movement fears what other people are going to think about them, which is kind of sad because you really shouldn't fear what other people think about you, because that's the ultimate prison. So, well, I've babbled long enough about this issue. In regards to 9/11 and specifically reopening the investigation, what do you have to say? You got the floor.
Thanks, man. It's one of my biggest things by far. It's one of the reasons that I decided to run for president. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I consider myself a member of the, quote, truth movement. I guess in a way. I mean, I don't label myself or whatever. I'm just somebody that doesn't believe the official story and would like to, and I feel that it's a huge, one of the biggest things that we need to get right and get the truth out there and be able to go back and fix some of the losses of freedom and some of the rights that we've had tampered with and so on. So I guess in a way I agree with you, but I also in a way agree with what you said is the problem from the truth movement. And so let me just say this. First of all, before I decided to run for president, I would go back still during the George Bush presidency and would say that he made a comment where he said not to allow us to question the official story, not to allow us to believe, these conspiracy theories and question the official story of 9/11. And when he said it, something just clicked with me where I just said, wait a minute, what? Just the way he said it, it just made me go, wait, why would he say that? Why did he say it like that? Why are you telling me not to question things? And I'm somebody that just has a problem with being told what to do, I guess, in general. And for some reason, it clicked with me, and I immediately went on YouTube and I looked up something about 9/11. And the first video that came up was Richard Gage and an Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth video, 2 hours long, where architects and engineers are. I watched the whole video, and it all just made more sense to me with what they were talking about with, this couldn't happen, or, this, just these different things that didn't add up with what the official story as I understood it to be was. So as I went through that, I just kept going, yeah, that kind of makes sense. That makes more sense than that. So by that time, I was fully questioning the official story. And I would say I became pretty obsessed. I would say I watched 40 hours a week for a few weeks, maybe more. I don't know. It was just in my free time, it was video after video after video on YouTube of all different, angles, like you talk about all these different things with the 9/11. And some of it I would look at and go, nah, I don't really buy that. Or other things I would go, yeah, that makes sense. I don't like to consider myself a, quote, conspiracy theorist. I don't know. I don't like to think of it in a negative way at all. I think that we should question official stories, and I think some things just are common sense when you look at it. I mean, it's just obvious. The official story is far less realistic than most of these, quote, conspiracies in the case of 9/11. And so for me, what I look at is when somebody tells me, look, I think the official story is fact, I think you're a nut, the two things that I ask people to look at, one is the towers did not come down because of what they told us they came down. They're not from office fires. It's not because planes hit them and then office fires and whatever. And specifically, I asked them to look at tower number 7, which wasn't hit by a plane. it didn't. And so you look at that, and that to me appears to be controlled demolition. I think that the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, I think that they preach controlled demolition on all three buildings. Now, Dr. Judy Wood preaches the directed energy, whatever it would be there. So where I guess in a way disagree with you or agree with what you call the truth movement stance is I think that when we get to where we are arguing with each other about what it was, I think that we get away from that we're all on the same team in that we agree that the official story is not what happened and that there are people in some pretty high positions within America, like you said, controlling the media and all this other stuff, where, they've lied to us. And so I think that it's more important that we just get out whatever the obvious things are of this. Tower 7 to me is obvious. The other one's the Pentagon. I do not buy that a Boeing 757 hit the Pentagon. And obviously the lack of debris and all this stuff. I'm sure most of your listeners, I would imagine, already are on board with that. I know you certainly know that that's not what happened there. So those are the two things I look at. And really those are the only there are other things that I certainly believe. I mean, I don't think that when a passport of one of these hijackers magically falls to the ground and is found and used as evidence in a bandana and all this other stuff. I mean, it's very obvious. When you hear the firefighters, the audio recordings from the firefighters from within the building and all the explosions and what they're saying in there, I think that's very obvious that those were not. And then the planes, certainly were not, the planes that hit the Twin Towers and stuff. I don't buy any of that. But I think when you get right down to it, the bottom line is the official story is not what happened. And I would like to see a real investigation. I would like to see as much truth as possible come out. George Bush and Dick Cheney testified behind closed doors together. I don't remember if it was off the record or whatever, but the bottom line is that obviously it was not an investigation, a real investigation into what they knew. And my reason for running for president was, one of the big ones was that you have George Bush and you had Barack Obama both say, do not allow yourself to question the official story. You've had a Republican and a Democrat in power there. And, neither of them have addressed the reality of that. We've lost, how many, trillions of dollars in these wars, how many thousands upon thousands. There's over 50,000 Americans wounded in those two wars. Not to mention how many are dead, not to mention all the families that lost someone that they love as a result of that. And then there are millions of people in, I don't remember the number now, 500,000, I don't know, but Iraqis that were killed in these, I got the number right here, 500,000 Iraqis. So, and about 1,200 or 12% of the returning military have PTSD. The U.S. service members that died in Iraq were 4,491, Afghanistan 2,361, and then civilian U.S. contractors in Afghanistan 1,173. And we just throw out these numbers like they're just statistics. I mean, every one of those have loved ones, and they left behind children, they left behind a wife, a husband, a mother, a father. 343 firefighters, 72 law enforcement officers, 55 military personnel. So I would rather than, for me personally, I just don't get into the debate to that degree of what it was, who motivated, who paid for this, and that because I think that's why we need a real investigation. So I'm all for those 28 pages, the HR 14 House Resolution bill, going through and getting those 28 pages out. But I think anything should be disclosed to the public, so long as it doesn't put our national defense or our military in direct danger. And I think in general we need to have less secrecy, and that's one of the reasons I went to that UFO conference in Maine, was because of my belief in that. But that's my thought on that. I think it's a reason not to vote for a Republican or a Democrat just because they do not touch the issue of 9/11. And just look at all the freedom we lost. Look at the NSA and the TSA and the Patriot Act and the Homeland Security and all this other stuff that came out of that and all the big government contracts. It's a huge issue.
Indeed, it is. And another huge issue, gun owner rights. Well, first and foremost, let me start off with a bang. Government so obviously staged Sandy Hook so they could justify taking our guns. I'm not afraid to say it. And you can actually say nobody died at Sandy Hook at this point because the FBI did release its crime statistics saying that there were no murders in the Newtown, Connecticut area during the time of the Sandy Hook massacre. It says in the statistics 0. Now, one might say, well, that's the government. The FBI is the government. That's the government telling us that. And government lies to us so much. I don't know if I can believe that they're telling the truth when they say that nobody died in Newtown, Connecticut area during the time period that was encompassing when the Sandy Hook massacre happened. But my point is there's nothing wrong with Sandy Hook conspiracy theories saying nobody died. Just make sure that when you say that, you show your FBI crime statistics with you. You should have them with you to prove your point there. But the Sandy Hook opens up a whole new can of worms. I don't think we really need to talk too much about that for the purposes of this interview. But what we do need to talk about is government wants to take our guns because the New World Order that controls the government wants a disarmed population because a unarmed population cannot protect itself from tyrannical government. The Founding Fathers put the Second Amendment in the Constitution so we can use guns to protect ourselves from tyrants in government and not to hunt animals like people try to brainwash us into thinking. And after they disarm America, they also want to disarm Switzerland. Switzerland is another country. Well, the problem with Switzerland, they require by law people to have guns, which the problem I have with that is you don't have the right to force people to have a gun if they don't want to have a gun. Some people don't believe you should use violence to escalate violence, so they would never use a gun under any circumstance. And to pass laws or public policy, I should say, that forces people to own guns is a violation of their rights. But still, it's good that the people of Switzerland have guns to protect themselves from tyrants. The same, of course, is true with America. So gun rights and how to keep the government from disarming us. Tell us all about this.
Yeah. In general, I think one of the things I talk about is I believe in the Constitution, our rights and our freedom. And so we're talking, first of all, if you talk about the First Amendment, I do not believe that we need to be in a free speech zone to have free speech. That's one of my big ones. I don't think there should have to be such a thing as a free speech zone in America. But when it comes to the Second Amendment, I'm a big believer in that. I definitely believe in gun owner rights. I think that obviously in my situation, I'm not able to have a gun. I've never had a gun in my life. In a way, I would like to have a gun right now because I am putting myself out there, as we talked about with UFOs, the 9/11 thing. And many other of my stances, it would probably be a good idea for me to have some security or some way of defending myself. But, I'm not able to do that. And until now, I would have never wanted to have a gun myself. That said, I believe that everyone in America, I think there should be a background check, a very basic one. And I think that it should be there to ensure that certain felons and people with severe mental illness have difficulty obtaining a gun. Now, they put so many people now on these medications and try to make everyone out to be crazy so that as they get older, they're going to tell them that they're not allowed to have a gun and this sort of thing. But I'm saying that there are some people with severe mental illness and some people that have certain felonies or certain crimes that they've committed where it would be best that we not put a gun in their hand if possible. That said, anyone else, I think if they want to have a gun to defend to protect themselves and their families, should have one. I'd much rather have good guys having guns than just bad guys. And I always have said the day that they come for your guns is they have declared war and you are their enemy. And so, don't just hand your gun to the enemy. Beyond that, I think you talked about Sandy Hook, and all I'll say on that is I agree with you 100%. I do talk about Sandy Hook once in a while. The only two things that I call conspiracies that I'll really get into are 9/11. And again, I don't even consider it a conspiracy. I think it's common sense. I mean, I think that it's just such a obvious thing that anybody that takes 2 hours, if you'll sit down with me, if you disagree with me, and if I could get a group of 15 people that think the official story is fact, and they want to sit down for 2 hours with me and watch video after video and hear me explain a few things, I guarantee 12 of those people on average would walk out going, okay, I don't believe the official story to be true. The other 3 are just, you're not going to ever convince otherwise. So, that's the bottom line. So Sandy Hook is one of them that I talk about very rarely, but I am a big believer. And the day that happened, I got a lot of flack because I said that didn't happen. The day it happened, I knew the official story was BS. I could feel it. And then you heard all those stupid actors that were out that were supposedly the parent, Robbie Parker, and the guy who the kid supposedly went to his lawn and he put him up in his van and took him somewhere to the firehouse. I mean, these people were so full of it and just horrible actors and are actors. And it was so obvious. It's sick. So anyway, so that's a big one for me. And the other one, of course, JFK assassination is obviously not not how it went down. So in any event, those are the only ones that I really get into because once I haven't really researched other things like the Boston bombing and these others. And I think once you start everything is a conspiracy, I think you lose some credibility you lose the focus on what you're trying to do. And the bottom line is I focus on my big passions, which is 9/11 is one of them. The Sandy Hook is a passion of mine, by the way. I think that's another one of these media things that was just disgusting. I don't know how CNN and some of these places are even in existence after the things that they're known to have pulled in the past, like the Iraq war thing back probably in the 90s or whatever, where they were filming from Atlanta or somewhere and saying that they were there in harm's way and putting on the gas mask and holding up a, quote, Scud missile that was, all this crap. I don't even know how they stay in business after that. But so I'm all for gun owner rights. I'm for the militias. I know that there's some things underway where some of these militia groups and some of these 3%ers and Oath Keepers and bikers and so on I guess they're heading to West Virginia for a big deal coming up here in a week or two, and are going to try to make a big event go down there to try to, I guess, overtake the local government or something. And I mean, it's public knowledge. It's not anything that is secret if you look into it. And I have some concerns about it. I mean, I'm all for doing whatever they think is right. For me, I don't really get involved with that sort of thing. I try to follow kind of the rules that are in place, so to speak. I filed my paperwork with the FEC. I'm assuming that there's going to be an election on November 8th, 2016, and I'm trying to position myself to be in the running for that. But I will be keeping my eyes glued around the 24th, 25th to the events in West Virginia. My fear with this is that if it doesn't go the way they think it's going to go, that it's going to create more of that gun control talk. It's going to create more of this martial law type setup. And I don't know. I hope that things go as well as possible. I have some concerns there. But anyway, so that's my thing on gun owner rights. I think that's one where they made a mistake. I think that's one of them where when they come for guns, I think that's going to be over the top. I think that there's going to be a lot of resistance there, and so we'll see what happens.
Okay, but there's probably going to be a few people that got a little uncomfortable when you said you support the idea of a background check, saying that the Second Amendment right to bear arms shall not be infringed. A mandatory government background check is in of itself infringement. One could make the argument that the only time one can have their right taken away is if they contractually agree through a contract to have their right allowed to be taken away. But other than that, the government requiring a background check, saying gun dealers have to give everyone a background check. If the gun dealer says, no, if I don't want to give a background check on anybody who tries to buy a gun from me, it is my right to not do a background check. And if someone commits a crime with a gun that I sell to them, well, don't blame me. I'm not responsible for that. I have every right to sell to them anyway, because you don't have the right to force me to undergo a background check. I cannot be sued for something like that. So to all those people that say a mandatory background check is an infringement of Second Amendment rights on the grounds that you cannot take away someone's right to own guns just because they might commit a crime, because the totality of the circumstances does not show that they would commit a crime with that gun. Do you have any response to that?
Well, I'm not big on the, I kind of agree with you, I guess, in a way there. But I mean, look, I don't think you can do the Minority Report thing and arrest people for crimes that they might commit or will commit in the future or something like that. I get that. But look, if you have somebody who goes to a mental health professional and they have severe mental health problems and they say, I'm going to, I'm going to get a gun and I'm going to go kill, I'm going to go shoot up a church, or I'm going to go shoot my boss or something like that. And it is a mental health, they are something that a background check would stop them from getting the gun as it is now. I think that's, to me, I guess that's common sense or whatever. I think that you should have something in place to try to prevent certain people that are in that class, in that state of illness, from having difficulty getting a gun. Now, if you went the other direction with that and said, no, that's all up to the owner of the shop to decide when that person walks in if they're fit to be sold a weapon, I guess then I disagree with the side of it that they aren't responsible to some degree if that person goes out and shoots up a family or something. I don't know. I would say that would certainly be I don't know, maybe a gray area or something where, I get on the one hand that they're not the one pulling the trigger. On the other hand, somebody's going to be a victim, and I think that maybe would be preventable to some degree. I think you could eliminate some of that. So I think that I agree with you on that. Anytime there's any kind of contract or any type of license or any of those type of things from the government, that is an infringement. I don't disagree with that. On the other hand, to me, it's just kind of a common sense safety measure that I think is for the best, to try to make sure that certain people have a difficult time obtaining a weapon.
All right, I'm not going to debate this any further because we go on and on with that. We got other things to talk about here. Sure. Military. Now, when it comes to the military, the 18 enumerated powers in the federal Constitution, it doesn't mention an Air Force, but then again, an Air Force obviously didn't exist back in the day the Constitution was originally written, so an Air Force in and of itself is not unconstitutional because over the course of time, technology is going to advance, therefore you got to accommodate with that and go with other ways to enhance the military, but that raises the whole issue of whether nuclear weapons can be considered an appropriate weapon for military to use, or does the totality of the circumstances mean that nuclear weapons are not something that anybody, even the military, has the right to own. And in regards to the president, when it comes, the president is really supposed to be just the quarterback of the Congress, in a sense. The Congress is supposed to decide everything because here's the deal: the federal government is not supposed to have authority to pass laws that affect the common people of the several states. The only authority the federal government has is to exercise the 18 enumerated powers within the federal Constitution, and the only one that gives them the authority to interact with the several states is the Commerce Clause, dealing with interstate commerce. And the federal government, when it comes to the state courts, the only two things other than commerce that they have any authority to get into in the state courts are treason and immigration. Well, that's what's supposed to be. We know the government is violating that at every turn, but when it comes to the military, we know that that's one of the hot topics in the 18 enumerated powers in the federal Constitution, and it's definitely very key with the president because the president is the commander-in-chief. So it makes sense for me to ask you, how do you see the military? Are you going to make sure that it acts within the one more thing, in the Constitution, I believe it says that in peacetime, we're not supposed, I don't remember the exact part of the Constitution, I believe it says in peacetime, the military cannot be a standing military. It cannot be ready to go to war, stand there as if it's ready to go to war in peacetime for any more than 2 years. I believe I've heard that from Eddie Craig of Rule of Law Radio. I believe the guy had said that, who was a guest on my show. But I don't remember the exact part of the Constitution. If we're in peacetime, a military, once 2 years are up, where it's standing there ready for war, just ready to go charging off in the jungle, so to speak, it has to retreat after 2 years. So that's another thing I thought I'd point out. So the military, and it's the president's job with the military, and what kind of weapons you want the military to have, and what authority do you want the military to exercise? Will it be within the confines of the Constitution? Can I trust you on that? Talk about this. You got the floor.
Thank you. And I talk about the Constitution and rights and freedom, and someday someone will nail me and say, what is the Seventh Amendment or something, and I won't be able to quote that. Or so that's definitely something I need to read word for word and take a couple days here and really, really study up on. So I'm not exactly sure with what you just said there, if that 2-year thing and all that. Bottom line to me is this: I am not a fan of the nuclear weapons, and it kind of goes back to, I guess, the UFO side of things. It seems to me that when I heard a National Press Club conference from, I believe, 2010, there were 8 retired military people that testified during that, and they were representing, I believe, 120 retired military that had all worked on nuclear test bases and had observed UFOs coming there and disabling their nuclear weapons, and not just 1 or 2, but all 10, or things of that nature. And to me, and at this conference that I went to, it ended up being a 6-day event for me. There's I definitely want to talk a little bit about that on this call too. But bottom line is that we got to spend a lot of time with people that are very knowledgeable on the subject. People have written books on it. People that are experiencers themselves. And it seems that a lot of the cases where the UFOs have been seen have had to do with nuclear weapons. And so I'm not a real big fan of that, to be honest, in general. I think that there might be something to that, where we probably would be a better world if there weren't any nuclear weapons at all. That said, I think that we need to protect ourselves against others that would have them. So we have to balance that. But I would rather have nobody have them, to be honest. My thing with the military is this: I did not serve in the military. I have the utmost respect and gratitude for anyone that has. And I offered my running mate position to a man in West Virginia named Richard, and he had served in the military 20-some years and had ran for Congress and did quite well in his running in 2014 as an unknown. I think he got 38% of the vote, and he had brought in like $15,000 up against $650,000 from the incumbent, and still managed to get 38% of the vote in the primary. And so, I mean, unfortunately for me, I think he would have been the best fit of all for what I was looking for in a running mate, but he decided he wanted to focus on things locally within his community rather than a national campaign. So I just want to emphasize that active military veterans and their families are my top priority. And if I am elected president, I will do everything I can to see to it that they have ongoing representation throughout my term in office. And whatever they need needs to be a priority. They shouldn't be going to a veterans clinic and being told we're not accepting new patients, or jumping through any other hoops to get the help that they need. So what I would like to see with our military, I'd like to get out of all these other countries that we are in, or all these bases all around the world. I'd like to keep our people at home if possible. And I'd like to build up our military so that we are so strong that no one in the world would want to test us, would want us to come in and, take action against them. And if they were stupid enough to do that, I'd like us to be able to go in, take care of business very quickly, get out very quickly. And if they want to regroup and rebuild and go again, then, obviously they definitely want to go get their 12 virgins in heaven or whatever, because, it would just be suicide. As it is right now, we talk about splitting up these families, with these immigrants and so on, but our families are split up here because we have these military fathers and mothers that are, fighting for our freedom, but they're doing it in these other countries. I'd rather see them here in America defending our border, helping out within communities. And one of the things I talk about is crime. I've got a huge problem with these street gangs or these cartels, anyone that's distributing, dealing, crack cocaine or heroin, or trying to get these kids to join gangs at 11, 12, 13 years old in communities. And I'm telling you, if you have a street and you have a couple Marines living on that street that are home instead of being in another country, and you've got some guy standing on the corner trying to sell their 12-year-old kids some kind of drug, I don't think that's going to go over too good. I'm pretty sure that those Marines are going to take care of that business real quick. I think our country would be a lot better off if we could keep our brave and our the best of America within America, building up our communities. And that's just how I view the military in general.
Thank you very much. I think I'll ask you one more question before I get Elizabeth on the show, and then I'll finish up after she's off by discussing some of the other things here. I see the thing here, reduce 18 trillion debt. Okay, some people would be laughing if they read this because, first of all, our debt is not 18 trillion. It's like almost 3 quadrillion because you're not including the derivatives and all that. And some might say, why would you even talk about reducing a debt when you can't possibly reduce it? Our financial system is untenable because fractional reserve banking, where they loan us money that doesn't exist and charge interest on the loans, makes debt and inflation unavoidable. So one might say, what's the point of paying back the debt when it is 100% unpayable? For every person that can pay back their debt, there is always going to be somebody who cannot pay back their debt because that's the way fractional reserve banking works. So I think we'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone here before I get Elizabeth on. Reducing the 18 trillion debt and also the reduce the 508 50. That's a B. Reduce the 50 billion foreign aid. Let's kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. Those issues. What do you have to say about these issues?
Yeah. So first of all, I agree with you 100% on the 18 trillion whatever debt. Are you on my website? Is that where you're seeing this? I'm not even sure now where some of this is. I've got that's something I got to update, and my business card has that on there as well. And I've updated my next order of business cards won't even have that on there about the $18 trillion thing because I've learned a lot more about that in the last few months. And yeah, it's a total scam. I mean, there's not even that much currency out there. There's not even that much money out there to pay, what would be required there. So one of my things now that I'm trying to learn more about is every time I hear my friend Michael Howell, who has a show as well, Fighting the Tyranny, and some of these other people, that they talk a lot about ending the Federal Reserve. And I'm trying to learn more about that, like how that would work. And everyone that talks about that makes sense to me. I just don't know exactly how that'll work. So I'm trying to I've got some people kind of working on that to help me understand that and a plan for that. That's something I got to just kind of scratch out of there because it is, I guess the bottom line with it is I'd like to reduce wasteful spending. I would like to try to get our spending under control in general. But no, I agree with you. It's a mess with that whole national debt situation. The $50 billion in foreign aid, I've got a video on my Facebook page where it shows a congressman, I believe from Texas, where he talks about the problem with this foreign aid thing is they put it all in one bill and vote yes or no. They don't look at each country individually and say, should we send them money? Should we send them money, yes or no? And so my whole thing with it is that I think we need to take care of our people first. I'm sure there are a couple of those countries getting money from us where it is in our best interest to help them in the long run. I'm sure that there is some kind of investment by doing so, or some benefit from us doing so. But in general, I think that we need to take care of our our homeless people, our people here in America, make sure that they're getting education, make sure they're having opportunities, and so I get frustrated when I see us sending money to other countries. But when I know that we have so many people struggling. We talked earlier about my history, that some of the darker stuff, and one of the things that came from the felony was I became homeless, and I was homeless for 14 months, and most of that time I lived in a vehicle. But I'm very in touch with that community and what they're going through, and I really want to help with getting experts involved in creating a way to address why they are homeless and help them to overcome those things so that they have goals, dreams, hope, and opportunities going forward. But yeah, that's my main thing with that, and I 100% agree with you. I've definitely got to update my website, and there's a lot I got to learn about with this whole Federal Reserve thing. But the debt is a huge thing.
Indeed it is. And one quick pointer before Elizabeth comes on. You may have heard people say that there's like a big Wave X thing coming in the next week or so with stock, among other things, the stock market might crash. And Alex Collier at a conference that I was at in Mount Shasta last month talking about how behind the scenes by around the October 20th or so time period, they are hoping to crash the dollar and release a new currency released that's backed by precious metals. That I don't really want to speculate on what might happen there. It completely falls out of the realm of this conversation, but I thought I'd throw that out for you if there's anything you want to think about in regards to updating your site and all. But without further ado, let's get Elizabeth Diamond on the show. Elizabeth, you are on the air. How you doing? You're free to plug your show if you want.
I'm great. Ed Baker, isn't Andrew just awesome? He knows how to squeeze it out of somebody, huh?
He's great. I'm glad you hooked us up. Thank you.
Andrew, you do a great job. I love your questions, and I love how you bring it out, and I'm learning a lot from you, Andrew. So I'm just having a memory. Me and Andrew did a show on his show, Nature and Reality, with Stephen Disclosure, UFO Disclosure. That was great, Andrew. And I just want to tell you, Andrew, you're the bomb on bringing the news update, that 5-10 minutes at the beginning of your show. And I haven't been able to do a lot of research and up-to-date news every week, what's going on in this world, the serious stuff and all that. So, Andrew, today I decided I'm coming to you every week for my news update. You just are right to the point. So thanks, dear.
Well, thank you. And then again, if you come to me, you're coming to Alex Jones, because that's where I feel the best news comes from. I believe I don't know if he's the best. Some might debate and say Drudge Report might be one of the best, because Drudge Report is an aggregate of different news sources. But then again, Drudge Report seems to think that Alex Jones is the best news source out there. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I'm just looking for the biggest hot stories going on in the week in the world that affects all of us, and I think you did a pretty good job at that.
Thank you very much.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, I'll give my stuff in a minute. I have a comment for Ed, and I have a question for you, Ed. You ready?
Okay.
Regarding 9/11, I was really into your guys' conversation in that, and it dawned on me, if we want to take the fast road to disclosure of 9/11, and I believe it was an inside job too, I was thinking, I think the fastest road to disclose for the mostest people to wake up in the world would be for maybe the President of the United States or, that would be the fastest road. Or another road would be like, I know Andrew, and I don't want to mention any names, but he mentioned a couple shows that are very popular out there disclosures of conspiracy theories, but they're really real. If they would, maybe they're shills and undercover too. They won't want to bring out, the planes hologram planes going into the buildings. But maybe they'll decide and change their mind and really bring out all the truth. Or maybe somebody undercover, a spy, will get some face-to-face video with a couple of the big conspirators seeing it on video and put it out on CNN News. But to me, I just want to say I think you're on the right track, and the fastest way to me would be for the President of the United States or somebody close to the President to disclose that for the world to wake up fast. And Any comments on that?
Well, thank you. I just think that it's something where no other person that will be on your ballot. I'm going to do my best to get on every ballot that I can. I've got to do petitions, and it's a big challenge for someone that's not a member of any political party to be on their election day. But I can almost guarantee you that there isn't going to be another name on the ballot that will address the reality of 9/11 and will push for the truth to come out and for there to be a real investigation and those that are responsible to be held accountable. I would be happy to be able to find out the truth and to be able to announce that to the people of America. And so bottom line is that the truth needs to get out there, and there needs to be a real investigation and not have it doomed from the beginning by who you select and what the rules are and who you omit from it and things of that nature. My understanding is they didn't even put the WTC Building 7 in the official report. So, there's just so many things that obviously are biased or just completely fabricated. So, I appreciate that. Did you have a question as well?
Yeah, good points. Yeah, okay, here's my question. What would your basic leading strategies and skills on what you would want to accomplish, you personally and, everything, what would your basic leading strategies, being a leader, strategies and skills be like in instances of working with different business groups or working with other countries or working in a team environment or working with the Congress and Senate? What and you might not know some, you know what you do now, and some may develop while you're in office. But what can you give some examples of some basic leading skills? Because you'll be basically, for lack of a better word, CEO of USA.
Right. Well, I think first it's just being reasonable. I talk about how I don't label people and I don't use those terms to. I think a lot of times that you look for differences in people, you try to find them because, you say, well, you're a liberal or you're a conservative or you feel this way about gay marriage, so that means you must feel this way about gun owner rights or this way about immigration. I'm somebody that looks at each thing individually. I try to learn all the facts that I can, and then I give my thoughts. And then on top of that is if you disagree with me after that, I'm very open to having you come to me and say, here's why I disagree with you. Give me your story and point me towards more resources so that I can learn more facts. And as I learn those facts, I am always reviewing my position on the issue, and I will never compromise my values in that process. But if in that process I decide that, hey, now that I know this information, this is how I stand on this issue, I'm always willing to do that. And so I think in general, I think that's a positive thing. I think that having that kind of an attitude is very important. We talked earlier about, Andrew said about the law of attraction, and I'm a big believer in the law of attraction. I'm sure you are as well from our past talks, Elizabeth, but I think that we need to keep things as positive as possible. I don't think we need the negative energy there. I think that we can, an example, kind of maybe a bad example, but, people like to say to you, you can't win because you don't have hundreds of millions of dollars. You can't compete in a presidential election because you're not a millionaire. And what I'm able to do is look at the other side of that and say, okay, the reality is that I can't win unless people become aware that I'm running for president and unless I get on ballots. So once people hear my message, they know I am an option that is serious about this, and they will see my name on Election Day on the ballot, then they can choose to vote for me or not. And as long as that part of the system isn't rigged, that they are actually having their votes counted, I can win. Some of that does take some money to get my word out and to get on some of these ballots. I have to pay a fee as well. So I do need some money, but it's going to be a fraction of whatever these other names on your ballot will spend. And what I think is, while these big networks say the greatest campaign is the one raising the most money, I say that that's not necessarily at all true. And in fact, I think at the end of the day, if my name is there with those others, and I am at that point, 419 days from now, getting the publicity that I am an option, I think that people will appreciate that I'm a candidate that can run on a relatable, reasonable, responsible budget while they are running on throwing so much money out there trying to buy the election. I think ultimately those could be the nails in their coffin. So I'm able to take what a lot of people look at as a negative, and I'm able to see kind of a bright side to that, and maybe something that'll work in our advantage, and we can keep going forward. I think that's important. I think that in general, I think that that's important for people to be able to do that. The other thing is that I'm for individuals. So when you're in schools, and I see these kids where they get suspended for biting a Pop-Tart and saying, hey, my Pop-Tart looks like a gun, or they wear a ring to school and they say it's like the Lord of the Rings ring, and they get suspended for that. They get suspended for a girl in third grade, I guess it was, shaved her head in support of a friend of hers that had cancer. They suspended her. You're not allowed anymore in a lot of these schools or in a lot of the society to have compassion for others. You're not allowed to be an individual, to have an imagination, to use your imagination. And I'm a big believer that we need to, encourage people to have dreams and goals, hope, and then to provide them with opportunities to achieve those things. So I think that that's what I want to emphasize to people all over the world. And then you talk about these other world people, getting out of their business and letting them be them, I think is one of the best things that we can do. Again, just let them be individuals as well. And that doesn't mean that I'm okay with countries where they sell children as sex slaves at 10 years old or to be married or something, or rape women or any of this sort of thing. Those are things where I would have a serious difficulty standing on the sidelines and not taking action against countries where they have those beliefs, that's okay. But in these other cases where we just think, oh, this is how you should live your life and this is how you should live your life, I don't think we need to be there dictating to them or trying to tell them that's what's right and your way is wrong. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but I was at least able to get a couple sound bites in there for a couple other things that I'm passionate about. So I won anyway.
Thank you. That was a great answer. And Andrew, thank you. Ed, thank you for the awesome interview you guys are doing now.
Thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you again, Elizabeth.
Yes, soon. And Andrew, I just want to let you know I enjoy working with you. I like your news attitude and getting it out to the world, wake it up. And just to update you, it started out Diamonds Forever 31, has morphed in probably the last year or less to Diamonds Network. So we have shows Monday through Thursday now, and they're all variety. It goes from spiritual, astrology, learning who you really are, your natural self, your unique self, your creative self, and within astrology and major other tools that beautiful people bring forth, galactizing. And our brand new show on Tuesdays is called Voices from the Alternative World, where we're bringing up-to-date news like you do, Andrew, but the news of people, groups of people, teams of people doing things out of this in a different way, creative, unique way, good for all, the highest good of all concerned. So we're bringing that out. You guys can go to Diamonds with an S Forever 31.blogspot.com to see all the call details, when, and the numbers, and the YouTube channels are on the right-hand side along with some links. And I think I have it, and I look forward to working more with you, Andrew, and also Ed. Thank you, guys. Love you both.
Love you, too. Thanks for calling in. Take care, Liz. Later. All right, just so you know, we've got about half an hour left on the live feed. Let's try to keep the show to 2 hours for the sake of all the people who have lousy attention spans, but we can go past 2 hours if you need to finish a thought or something. People just have to call in to listen if they want to hear that. So finishing up with some of the things on your goals and platform here, crime-related stuff, drug trafficking, prisons, jails, and voting rights for felons. Let's try to kill three birds with one stone here. First of all, I'd like to give my take here. Drug trafficking. Once called into Eddie Craig's Rule of Law radio show, and I asked him, when does the government have authority to criminalize the use, possession, and sale of things that they want to call controlled substances? And Eddie's response was, well, first of all, you need to understand that statutes, codes, ordinances, and even case law are not laws. They are what someone in government considers to be public policy, and they are not technically binding upon the general public. The general public rarely gets a chance to get involved, since the representatives in government decide what they want public policy to be without letting the general public get involved. And he made it clear that Eddie's made it clear that everybody, regardless of their age, and anybody who says minors have fewer rights than adults doesn't know what they're talking about. Everybody, from the moment they are born, has the right to do anything that does not result in you causing or intending to cause harm to another person or property through either negligence or deliberate intent. And the government was created for the one and only purpose of exerting by any force to protect the rights and property of everyone under the auspices of that government, and the United States government has the authority to exercise that one and only reason it was created within the confines of the 18 enumerated powers of the federal Constitution. Eddie also made it clear that you need to understand that it's very easy to determine if government is abusing its authority. And he said, here's the test. If I cannot order or force you to do something in my individual capacity, if I as an individual cannot order or force you to do whatever, then I cannot get together with a group of people and do the same thing. I cannot get together with a group of my neighbors and also order you and force you to do that, because as an individual, I never had that authority. So getting together in a group does not grant that authority any better than it did as an individual. Now, getting together in a group would give you a much better chance of using some sort of violence or force to make someone obey you, but that does not grant you any more authority to do that than it did as an individual. The collective authority of a group cannot exceed the authority of any individual member of that group, and that means that the government as a collective group cannot have authority to do anything that none of the individual members of the general public already had, because the people in the general public created the government. Well, that raised the question, well, we in the general public do not have authority to punish people for doing a drug or whatever we want to arbitrarily call a controlled substance in the privacy of our own home. So what authority does the government have to do that? Well, the answer is they don't. Drug laws are not laws. Like growing pot, manufacturing meth, and giving alcohol to underage people is not a crime, because the things that ban it are not laws. They are actually public policy, and we have been suckered into believing it's law. And whenever you get charged with a drug-related offense, anytime you get charged with a crime, well, I shouldn't say crime, but anytime you're charged with an offense in which you do not cause harm or intend to cause harm to someone through negligence or deliberate intent, you will find that they always allege that you committed an infraction in a commercial capacity over which there exists some governmental regulatory authority, because government has authority to regulate commerce by virtue of the fact that where there is commerce, there's a contract. Where law, there is a contract. The contract is the essence of law, and the common people decided that the courts would act as a neutral arbiter to lay down the law in the event that a contract violation happens. So if you look at the statutes and the codes, you can prove by virtue of the fact that certain words have legal definitions that are different from standard English dictionary definitions, that those legal definitions will, in most cases, have a commerce-specific definition. So people don't realize that in order to beat the charges, like in regards to drug use or possession, you object to the commercial nexus in court, but they don't do that, so they get charged with a drug-related offense, which isn't technically a crime. Now, that's the issue of drug trafficking. I've babbled long enough about this, and I don't want to talk anymore because I might confuse you in regards to some of the other things you have here on crime. So this issue of drug trafficking, taking into account what I've just explained here, what do you have to say about this issue?
Yeah, crime, it's a big thing for me. I feel like So first of all, how are these drugs getting into our country? So my biggest concerns are things like heroin and cocaine. And, I've heard a lot of things about the CIA in the past having brought in a lot of cocaine into Arkansas, and then, this heroin, I hear a lot of things about the poppy fields in Afghanistan. And so, look, the bottom line is whatever ways that these drugs are coming in, and if it is something within our government that is making that happen, then that is something that needs to be addressed. I have no problem with marijuana, okay? I have no problem with anyone that chooses to use marijuana. In my home state of Oregon now, it is legal here or decriminalized or however they define it now. Obviously there's a few other states as well that are that way. I'm all for states voting and deciding what they want to do within their states. But I am, in general, for the legalization of marijuana. There are 40,000 people, the last stats that I saw, 40,000 people that are incarcerated in America that have a marijuana-related conviction, and 20,000 of those people only have a marijuana-related conviction. And to me, that space is needed for people that are actual dangers to society. One of my big things is that I think there should be much stiffer penalties for those that intimidate, threaten, or abuse women, men, children, or animals. So I'd like to get, some of these people behind bars. Now, I have no problem with the person that uses cocaine or heroin or these drugs. That's not who I want to come after. I'd like to help those people if they are in need of help for their addictions. I'd like to make sure that we have those resources available to do that. I would like to go after those, though, that are dealing the drugs to them. And that is my bigger issue there. So first of all, stopping from coming in, having strong penalties against those that are dealing drugs. I've got a big problem when somebody's on a street corner and dealing drugs to a kid or something like that. I got a problem with that. That goes back to I think we should have a couple Marines there to take care of that.
Right.
Situation.
Let me just interrupt you there for a second. The government does have authority to regulate commerce, but of course, if you want to sell drugs, you can't get a permit or a license to do that, because the moment the government finds out that you're getting a permit or license to sell drugs, you're going to jail. Well, the government is not supposed to have authority to ban the sale of drugs. If you do any sort of a study of the constitutions and all, it's just been grossly interpreted as they do. And of course, the problem you have is people selling. Well, yes, that's okay, but if you want to give people the right to get a permit or a license to sell that stuff, and then have the government regulate that, but not criminalize people who have a permit or a license to sell that, a legitimate permit or a license, would you say that would be an appropriate way to go about it?
I think that my answer is that I'm completely against cocaine and heroin being sold in the United States. And I think there's probably other drugs as well that would fall into that. Marijuana, I've got no problem with. One of my things is that when I see certain communities where cocaine use seems to be, I don't know if the word is rampant, but there's a lot of people using drugs. I don't know. This is just my take on it. I see it often in the black communities for the cocaine, and a lot of times I also see it in homeless. People that are homeless, I see a lot of times that they either end up on these drugs after they become homeless, or it leads them to becoming homeless. But a lot of times if you sit down, I do this just because in my community I have sat down with quite a few people. I just took a 14-day trip to Maine, Portland, Maine, from Portland, Oregon. I went on Greyhound, 4 days on a Greyhound bus, 6 days in Maine, 4 days back on a Greyhound bus. And I can't tell you how many people I talked to on the bus that shared with me their cocaine story, or talked about heroin or cocaine. And a lot of them, it was that they ended up beating it. A lot of them are still struggling. A lot of them just lost somebody that they knew from school that died of a heroin overdose. And honestly, as I said that about black people, or the communities, most of these people were not black that were sharing their stories with me. So I don't mean to at all say that in a, try to, stereotype or say that that's where the drugs are going. But I have seen a lot of documentaries, though, and a lot of things where that is what they show is some of these communities where there are very poor people that are in gang infested, gang-controlled neighborhoods where a lot of people are on drugs. And so I have a problem with that. I have a problem with those people that are profiting the way they are. I fear that drug cartels are getting profits out of this. And, I don't know that I'll have a great answer that's going to make this just all come together or anything, but I am against drug cartels. I am against violent street gangs. I'm against people that think they own neighborhoods or own streets. And I want to help do whatever I can, if I'm president, to put things in place, to encourage neighborhoods to be able to stand up against those people that ruin their quality of life. When you're in a neighborhood and somebody shoots and kills somebody and there's 10 witnesses, but not one of them will come forward and say who did it because they know that they will be the next person that gets shot or someone they love will, that's not a very good situation in America. And I know you can't completely defeat that, I'm sure, but I would like to give it our best shot so that the kids are growing up in neighborhoods in America that are safe and they're not having to choose to join a gang. The other side of it is that I'd like to help those neighborhoods to have opportunities so that the life that they, choose to live, they're not having to make that choice to join a gang because that's the best option. I'd like to make sure that they're getting education, that there are jobs there for them, that their quality of life can be better than the quick cash and the risk that is involved in that lifestyle. But I don't have all the answers. But I do believe that that's a huge problem. I think that I have a problem with those kinds of drugs. I think they ruin lives. I think that I think that they profit people that really are not very good people. So I as far as I'm concerned, I'm after the Mexican mafia and I'm after the drug cartels, and that's another group that can come after me at some point in this process if they ever decide I'm an actual contender in this. But I'm not, I wouldn't be running for president if I had a wife or if I had a family of my own, because I wouldn't put anyone else in this position. But I am serious about going after what I think the problems are in America and addressing the real issues. And one of those is 9/11, the reality of that. One of them is getting control of our illegal alien situation. And one of them is the drugs and the violent gangs that are in this country that are intimidating people that are good people in their neighborhoods, and nobody owns a street, and it's ridiculous that it's been allowed to happen. And another thing, because we're talking about crime, I want to talk about is police. You talked about it in your opening about accountability and the police officer that slammed somebody down and paralyzed them and all this crap. And if it's all right, I'd like to address a little bit on that. And that is that when you look at things like Ferguson, Missouri, okay, and so you had Michael Brown there. And my take on Michael Brown is that he was a thug. He's 18 years old, whatever, a very big guy. He went into a store. He stole stuff from the store. He manhandled the owner. That's all on video. He goes out, and then he somehow gets into a verbal or some kind of confrontation with this driver, officer, and he comes up to the vehicle, somehow wrestles with him. The officer shoots him and kills him, right? And my belief is that Michael Brown's actions that day put him in the position that he was in, and he ended up being fatally wounded, and that was his doing. The officer acted, as far as I could tell from everything, correctly, okay? I have no problem with any of what happened right there. I don't think those riots and everything that happened in Ferguson, and 1 year later now, and they're still making Michael Brown out to be this huge victim, I don't think any of that would be accepted as appropriate behavior to protest this. I don't think that officer would be out of a job, if not for the past, where officers clearly did make decisions that were racially motivated. There are plenty of instances where that clearly was the case. And the problem I see is that the good cops don't stand up against the bad cops very often. So there's a video that I've seen where a black lady is in police quarters, and she's standing there talking or whatever, and an officer holds a taser up to her and shoots her with a taser. There was no need to do that. And it was like a joke to the cops, and he did it, tasers her. And there's like 6 other cops standing there around. Why those 6 cops didn't go tackle that guy, rip his badge off him, and arrest him, to me, everyone in that room should be, lose their badge. So until good cops, and so I talked about St. Louis or Ferguson, but then you have Baltimore and you have all these other places where things happen, where I think that the rioting is much, or the, I don't know, rioting's not the right word, the demonstrations, I think are much more appropriate, I guess you could say, warranted. I think until a good cop from Portland, Oregon, on a day off or on their vacation, goes to Baltimore and stands with those protesters, either in full uniform or at least in some kind of a T-shirt that they have made up that says, I am a police officer in Portland, Oregon, and I demand accountability, from the police force, until they stand shoulder to shoulder, side by side, and demand that these bad cops be held accountable, I don't think we move forward. And the good cops and bad cops all look alike at the end of the day because they protect one another, and they're all being put in grave danger as a result of that, because as you're seeing some more violence against police officers, and everybody goes, police officer lives matter, and they come out and they defend the police officers because it's horrible that somebody went out and decided to shoot at a few of them. Well, you're damn right that's horrible. It's beyond awful. But I think that's a reality of what's going to happen if you don't start taking action against the bad cops. And it's also a shame that a good cop that shoots Michael Brown ends up losing his job or having to quit because of that. Because, again, it's because bad cops in the past have made these racially motivated decisions. And so that's a big one for me. I want to call on every good cop out there to take action against the bad cops for their own safety and for their well-being and to protect their badge and what it should represent, because those are the best people in America, the military and the police officers that do it for the right reasons and do it the right way. So that's my thoughts on crime.
Thank you very much. Let's 2 more things on crime, but let's just treat this as a simple yes or no question, because I want to try to cover a couple of things in the 12 minutes or so before the we can go a little past 2 hours if we have to, but prisons and jails and voting rights for felons. First of all, voting rights for felons, simple yes or no question. Do you think felons should have voting rights? Yes, no, or it depends on the felony they committed?
If I can make it 10 words or so, and the answer is yes. Most states, they do have their rights. It's only a few states where they don't. But I do believe everyone, once they complete their incarceration, possibly their probation time, should be able to vote.
Okay, thank you very much. Also, prisons and jails, they are overcrowded, and another big problem is a lot of the prisons have been privatized, which makes it a money-making business, which in turn means that they're going to try to get as many people convicted of crimes, and I would put the word crimes in quotation marks because I said a lot of things are not crimes because a lot of things are not laws, they're public policy, and we're being suckered into thinking they're crimes. So are you for making all prisons at some sort of federal, well, I shouldn't say federal, not necessarily federal, but government run and not private, so it doesn't become a money-making business?
Yes.
Okay. That's good to know. I'm glad you're on the same page with that. So moving on with some of these last few topics, voter fraud. As a third-party candidate, this is not really something many people would say you would be concerned about, because many would say it's impossible for you to win because you're a third-party candidate. You're just doing it for the hell of it, to get some important words out. But let's just imagine you do become the next Ross Perot or something, and they have to commit voter fraud to keep you out. What's your strategy for making sure they don't get away with it, if you do have a strategy for that?
Well, I'm not doing it just for the hell of it. I definitely think we can win. So, and that's the truth. So, and I'm not saying I will win, but I want to get my name out so that the American people have the opportunity to decide who wins, and that I am an option, so that can win. I watched a video from, I don't know, a few years ago, a documentary. It had to do with the 2004 election. It was called Voting Day or something, Election Day maybe it was. And they showed a lot of that fraud. So my belief is that a lot of the rigged system is at the primary level. And I think it'll be very clear if we end up with a Bush and a Clinton that comes out of this primary as such. I think it'll be very obvious that that's the case. And maybe if it's somebody other than Bush, or maybe it'll still be pretty obvious. We'll see. But what I believe is that they give the voters the illusion of choice, and that essentially whichever one of those two wins, that they will end up basically being the same person anyway. They'll serve the same evil agenda that's been in place, and they will not serve the American people. My belief is we can defeat this system that is set up by, I don't think that they do account for a third party, non-affiliated candidate that doesn't have an agenda where they are a puppet or anything like that. I honestly believe that we can win this election. So now, as far as the voting machines and things like that, I don't know a lot about the how those have been rigged in the past or how they will be rigged in the future. But I believe if we can make a big enough showing and get out there and get the word out, hopefully we can overcome that in enough places to where we get the numbers that we need to win if that's what the people want. One of the things in that Election Day video, though, that they showed was, and I think it was mostly focused on Republican Democrats, I guess, but they were showing like Illinois and, just different things where one of the rules is you couldn't campaign within 100 feet or something of a polling place. And so one thing they showed was there was literature for a candidate on the table when you walked into the polling place, all kinds of brochures and stuff for a candidate there. They picked that up and got rid of that. But another thing was that there's a guy standing outside the polling place handing out pencils, these little golf pencils, and on the pencil it said a candidate's name and what position they were running for. So they're handing a pencil out for someone to actually use to fill out their ballot with a candidate's name on it. So obviously those are concerns, and I think what it's going to take is these other big parties, they have, I don't know if you want to call them watchdogs or whatever, but they actually go out to the polling places and police them throughout the day. They'll actually have people sitting there all day watching what's going on. I think that we need to find out how we can go about that within, the rule, or what our rights are that way. If I can just have an average citizen go out and sit at a polling place all day and make sure that there isn't any of that kind of stuff going on, then I think I need to find some volunteers on that day to do that throughout the country. For me, it's all volunteers. I mean, it is what it is. A lot of times I post something and I get a ton of likes, and I post something and say, hey, I need a volunteer, and I get 2 likes, and it's hard to get people, even if they really believe in you, it's hard to get people to go to have the time and to go out and do things. So I hope Election Day 2016 is a day that a lot of people are going to circle on their calendar, November 8th, and I hope that they will give me that day to help me out, those that would like to see us succeed, and actually, especially the states where I am on the ballot, and we'll go out and actually do what is necessary to help make sure that there is as little of that corruption and bias going on as possible, and that's the best we can do. We'll have a plan in place for that as we get closer to that date, and I'll do my best for it. What can you do about machines that are rigged? I mean, how can you control it? I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I hope enough people get aware of this campaign and get behind it, and that we can, make a showing where we can win if that's what the people want.
Sounds great. Yeah, I love your attitude, man. All right, let's try to show on 2 subjects really quickly. UFOs and NSA. Firstly, the NSA. They say the NSA is the real shadow government. They're a global surveillance panopticon is the arch of tyranny, the keystone, I should say, that holds the arch of tyranny for the New World Order together. I mean, virtually every country has its own version of the NSA. It's just that the American NSA is by far the most notorious and the most sophisticated in terms of what its technology is doing. It has nothing to do with keeping us safe. The idea that it's to keep us safe from terrorists is an outright lie. It's to see what people are doing to blackmail them, to predict future trends, to help people cash in on the stock market, and also to just suppress our consciousness in general because people behave differently when they're being spied on. So if you do have a plan in place, how do you suppose we crush the NSA surveillance system?
Well, all I know is that I'm against, having it at all, really. And I mean, if there is if you sit there and you suspect people being terrorists, or, I think that there'd have to be a really good reason to listen into a certain person's call. I think it would have to be a lawful way, which I'm not sure if any of that would be anyway. But I'm totally against them being able to listen into this call, or if we weren't on the air or whatever, if you and I were just having a private conversation, I'm totally against that. So I think that anything like that should be illegal, and if there are groups doing it, then they need to be shut down, and those that are responsible for it need to be put in prison. So I don't have an exact answer outside of that. I feel that it's a problem and that I'm totally against it. Any of that freedom stuff, we go back to 9/11 with all that, the things that we lost as a result of that, and how many of these things were pushed for. The Republican debate, which I forced myself to watch the first one because of a radio show I was going to be on to be asked questions about it. And there was a back and forth between two of the candidates where one of them was against it, and the other one was for more and more and more and more of it to protect our safety and all this crap. And my thing is, look, there are going to be some bad things that happen. When you have 300 and some million people in America and all these people around the world, you're not going to stop every would-be terrorist event or every bad thing that's going to happen. And then on top of that, it seems that most of the bad things that happen are false flags and things that we set up to begin with. So, it's crap. I mean, so, I don't know, man. It frustrates the hell out of me. I would love to do whatever it takes to make that stop.
Definitely make sure whistleblowers don't get prosecuted as well.
Oh, that's
a
huge one for me, buddy. Let me just say that real quick about the whistleblowers. So, Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning, who was Bradley Manning at the time, but those people, and I guess that Edward Snowden hasn't been convicted of anything yet or whatever, but if I'm president, week one, I will be drawing up whatever it takes to pardon those people. To me, you have candidates that they say, one of them wants them to spend, the rest of their life in jail or whatever. One of them wants them killed or whatever, executed for this. And for me, I think they're talking about Edward Snowden in that case. But for me, whether they did anything wrong or not, if their way of going about it was wrong, I don't see what choice they had. Really, they couldn't take this information to their superiors. They shared stuff with the American people who should not be the enemy to begin with. And my problem also is if you're going to punish these guys for doing that, why are the people that they're blowing the whistle on not being punished to the fullest? It makes no sense to me. So week number one, if I am elected president, the process will be in place to pardon several people that are being punished right now for doing the right thing. And those are two of the people.
Yeah, and of course, a lot of the American people, how is it that they're getting away with not prosecuting the people that the whistleblowers are blowing on? Well, one of the big answers is because the American people are apathetic, and also the American people are fearful, paradigmatic, and stupid, and they will not believe a conspiracy because they can't handle the truth. I think as president, it would certainly be in your best interest to give the American people a good kick in the pants and say, stop being sheeple, stop being apathetic, stop being stupid, act like you understand a conspiracy when you see one and don't act like you don't. But, that's a sensitive subject. I don't want to talk about that anymore. We'll have to go a little bit past 2 hours here to cover the one final subject, which is UFOs. I want to point out my interview with John Lear. He said that first of all, George Kavaslis told me the vast majority of UFOs that you see, there's a percentage factor with what UFOs are, but the majority of them have some connection to military-industrial complex. And John Lear, in my interview, told me that every single military-industrial complex UFO, regardless of whatever country it's from, has some extraterrestrial nexus connection to it. So that says a lot in regards to being the president and wanting to expose the UFO thing the same way JFK did. How do you want to go about doing this?
So my UFO thing is this, that I never necessarily believed in or didn't believe in UFOs or aliens or things of that nature. There were times in my life where I was curious about what was out there on like YouTube, what videos might exist that would maybe show some evidence and so out of curiosity, I'd watch some videos. Sometimes it was mainly, really for entertainment to see, what these people were talking about. Other times it was just curiosity, the Phoenix Lights or whatever else that I would come across. But somebody named Eric Mitchell had gotten on my Facebook. I'd sent him a friend request, didn't have a clue who he was or anything, and he comes back and responds to me and says something about disclosure, full disclosure. And I said, full disclosure of what? And we went back and forth a few times, and I found out that he is somebody that really wants full disclosure of anything UFO related, from our government and so on. So what I found was that we were very much on the same page in that I'm for less secrecy from our people, from the government to our people. So I am for full disclosure of anything so long as it doesn't put our national defense or our military in direct danger by doing so. And by the way, I don't consider these things to do that. I think that the information coming out that says, look, they disabled our nuclear weapons when, back in whatever year that was that they did that, I don't see that as really being something that specifically would put us in danger by letting that information out. Obviously, we put our weapons back up. We're back in, having those things all online again. So as far as how you do it, I just think that we need anything that is classified to be released. And as far, again, as each thing, item by item, make sure that it doesn't put specific military people or anything in direct danger. But I don't see that happening with that case. So I was invited to this event in Maine. It was Starborn Support Presents Experiencers Speak, and it was a conference on the 28th and 29th of August. Took a Greyhound out there, and some people that wanted me to attend paid for that and helped me get a room there and all this sort of thing. And I was able to listen to their presenters. They had people there like Tom Reed, who just had a monument put up in Massachusetts for his experience, and Travis Walton was there, who had the incident in Arizona 40 years ago. That's been very public. A lot of other people, Stan Friedman, Reverend John M. Polk, who has a radio show that I was on recently as well. So a lot of these people were there as presenters. Eric also was a presenter. He is an experiencer himself. And so I learned a lot from these people. I left that conference. It was a 2-day conference. I stayed 3 nights at a hotel, and then it's an invitation only, but about 50 people went out to a lake house. And the conference continues, so to speak. It's like a retreat / whatever, where Travis Walton was there, a bunch of these people were there, and you just spend that whole time with them. I stayed 3 more nights there, and so I was able to learn a lot. And what I left there with was the absolute belief that there is, without a doubt, that there are UFOs, that there are aliens, that these experiences, that the people that I talk to there are real. Do I believe a lot of the things people have seen are military? I'm sure they are. But these specific cases, I believe that were more than just that. And so like Travis Walton, there were like 5 people passed lie detector tests on what they saw. I mean, the mathematical likelihood of that happening where all of them would pass a lie detector test was extremely unlikely. But there's 2 people that happen to be a father and daughter that I talked to, and they both had experiences together as well as things where one remembers something the other doesn't, and back and forth. And talking to them made me a 100% believer that what they're saying is true. So I have no problem saying to anybody, and anybody that says, oh, you're off the reservation now because you are talking about UFOs and you're running for president, my thing is, look, even if there's nothing there, there's stuff that is classified about it. We need less secrecy from our government. And also, I say this, and I said this long before this UFO stuff, but I said, I don't play golf. I plan on working all 1,461 days of my term. I'm not running for a second term as far as actively campaigning for it. I'll do what is necessary if I'm elected so that I appear as an option on your ballot that second term. But I won't be actively campaigning. You'll base your entire decision whether or not to vote for me on my performance during my first term. And I will take a day or two during that 1,461 days when I need a break from the White House, and I will personally go to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, and I'll go to Area 51 in Nevada, and I'll see what's there myself. Now, some people then say, hey, your security clearance won't even allow you to do that. Well, if that's the case, I will make that very well known, and I'll make a lot of noise about that as well. So, but that is my commitment level, is that I want to look firsthand, and I would like to take a team with me of people as well. I'm sure that would not happen, but that's something I would push for, to have some independent people also taking a look at that, that are, trustworthy and up on this subject. So that would have a better idea what to look for than I would. But anyway, that's my take on that. I left that conference, and I'm now talking about going down to California. They also, by the way, let me speak at that conference to introduce the audience to my being a candidate in this election. So I took about 7 minutes just to address the audience. I've got a lot of pictures on my Facebook about it. I'm going to put them up on my website, which is edbaker2016.com. And so to me, it is a big deal, and I'm very happy to stand with those that would like to see disclosure. And some people think disclosure is a dangerous thing in this area. That they think that people will not go to work the next day, and that all these other things will happen. I don't subscribe to that as much. I think people, if the truth came out about that, or some documents were released, I think people would go to work the next day. I don't think we'd have as big of a problem as what they're talking about. And so whether Americans can handle the truth or not, I think that it's time for them to start getting introduced to some reality.
Couldn't agree with you any better on that. Well, Ed, I guess we'll bring the show to an end. It was a fascinating interview. Learned a lot about you, learned a lot about the government, and even some far-out things as we finished off UFOs as well. So I guess I'll bring the show to an end by telling you the same thing I tell all of my guests. You are a fascinating individual. I have no doubt I could do another show with you if I wanted to, but one of my goals with this show is to get as many different guests on as possible before giving any one specific guest double dips, because I feel that is the fairest, most impartial, and most informative way of doing a radio show that seeks to expose the true and false nature of reality. That does mean I probably will not be asking you to come on my show again, but that's only because I need to give hundreds of other fascinating individuals the chance to have some glory on my show. But mark my word, I'll spread this interview far and wide, upload it to YouTube and whatnot, and even post it on a few social media networks. Hopefully that'll increase the view count, and I do hope that doing so will get you some votes so you could perhaps become the next Ross Perot.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Appreciate having you on. Take care, Ed, and good luck.
Goodbye.
Later. That is the end of this show, folks. Next week, I don't have a guest scheduled. I actually wanted to do the show by myself, do a sort of a WaveX fall equinox special to talk about the science and history behind the solstices and equinoxes, and also a general talk about what WaveX is. Certainly be reading off some notes and some websites and all to do that. And then, well, certainly I don't have any guests after that, so I certainly have to get to contacting a lot of potential guests. Nobody on that was on before, because I just told Ed I want to keep getting different people on. On October 2nd, which is a Friday, I do have a 1-hour special with John Ventry as a preview for that MUFON conference in Langhorne, Pennsylvania that's going on October 9th and 10th. I'll be going to that UFO conference. So that show is in the works in the future, but as of now, I haven't planned for what exactly I'm going to do next week, even though I just said I do have a good idea of what I'm going to talk about. And, of course, I do have to get a lot of guests, contact a lot of guests to have them on. So that's the end of this show. This is Andrew Fisher signing off from Nature of Reality Radio. Namaste, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your trek throughout infinite consciousness.